Thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here today. It is absolutely wonderful to join you in the great state of Georgia here in Savannah. I hope y'all got out to golf. Anybody? Okay, well, yeah, I'm not a big golfer either. I used to own clubs. That's about as far as I got. But anyway, thank you so much to the Job Creators Network's second annual Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala. Your leadership to promote entrepreneurship and innovation on main streets across the country is helping usher in the golden age of America. And it is an honor to kick off this critical panel discussion about the impact of burdensome regulations, those federal regulations, and how rolling back onerous bureaucracy will free up the economy to create jobs and reignite this nation's entrepreneurial spirit. As chair of the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, as well as the chair of the Senate DOGE caucus, I am proud to lead the charge on policies that make America more efficient, innovative, and secure. And as you all certainly know, small firms and startups are the backbone of our economy from coast to coast, and especially in America's heartland that I call home. Iowa's small businesses create jobs in our local communities to make the American dream a reality. I know the same is true here in Georgia and each of your home states. It has been a personal mission of mine to end the red tape nightmare that has tormented our small business owners. According to JCN, overregulation is one of the biggest challenges facing small businesses. The massive mountain of paperwork hours due to bureaucratic red tape cuts into small businesses' bottom line. It distorts decision-making, it slows job creation, and balloons compliance costs. Simply put, it is absolutely unsustainable. Under President Biden's watch, the cost of regulations on small businesses grew exponentially. In just 4 years, Biden's bureaucrats promulgated more than 1,100 final rules that cost Americans, and I hate this, cost Americans over $1.8 trillion and more than 350 million hours of paperwork. In total, the Biden administration's regulatory costs were 600 times higher than that of the first Trump administration and more than 3 times higher than that of the Obama administration. These numbers, folks, are staggering and help to illustrate the size and severity of the problem. Perhaps the best example of Biden's large-scale regulatory harm was the absolutely unhinged, job-killing Green New Deal priorities implemented at nearly every agency. These came at the expense of hardworking farmers, our energy producers, and entrepreneurs. Coupled with that administration's failure to comply with the law, such as a basic cost-benefit analysis, it was crystal clear that America's small businesses were not even an afterthought. However, through the efforts of this Congress, President Trump's work on DOGE and the Supreme Court's decision in Loper-Bright to reverse the Chevron doctrine that previously shielded courts' review of agencies' harmful regulations, historic strides are being made toward cleaning out the regulatory underbrush and keeping unelected bureaucrats in check. On the legislative front, I recently reintroduced a bill called the Prove It Act. This requires agencies to consider both the direct and indirect costs for small businesses before finalizing regulations. It also requires the Small Business Administration's Office of Advocacy to formally review federal agencies' certification of rules and prove that the federal government is fully compliant with existing law. Finally, it gives small businesses a voice in the rulemaking process to shift the balance of power away from the administrative state and back onto Main Street. Congress must prioritize passing the Prove It Act to give small businesses a seat at the table and to restrain bureaucrats with accountability throughout the regulatory process. I want to thank the Job Creators Network for their support for the Prove It Act and continued leadership in this area. You all have been tireless advocates for regulatory reform, and it is making a difference. Because you are the first to feel the impacts of bad regulation, we will need your continued voices to get the Prove It Act and similar legislation across the finish line. In the shorter term, as soon as next week, the Senate will confirm Dr. Casey Mulligan to be the Chief Counsel for Advocacy at the Small Business Administration. As a trained economist and a champion for a common sense approach, Dr. Mulligan has done extensive work to ensure economic analysis properly reflects the cost of regulation on small businesses. I am excited to get him in place because I'm confident that Dr. Mulligan will be a great partner for small business and the implementation of the Prove It Act. The new administration is also hard at work to optimize the regulatory environment for businesses to flourish. Under the leadership of Georgia's own SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler, the Trump administration has already announced a critical manufacturing initiative to restore American economic dominance and national security by cutting $100 billion in counterproductive regulations and expanding access to capital, which will fuel America's blue-collar boom. To support these efforts, I introduced new legislation just yesterday to expand the SBA's loan programs, which operate at zero cost to the taxpayers. This will provide needed capital to support American manufacturers as we commit to making more here on American soil and end over-reliance on countries that don't have our best interests in mind. Even the judiciary branch's pendulum seems to be swinging back towards placing a much-needed check on unelected bureaucrats. The Supreme Court's Loper-Bright decision that reversed the Chevron doctrine was a welcome surprise. It has shifted the power to interpret laws from the administrative state back to the judiciary as clearly written in the Constitution, and will be an invaluable check on the bureaucracy. This will help force agencies to stay within their defined statutory boundaries, limit the power of unelected bureaucrats, and empower grassroots efforts to overturn the biggest and most burdensome regulations. Finally, I want to highlight the Trump administration's great work on deregulation. In addition to DOJ's efforts, the president has required agency heads to find and repeal all regulations and burdensome, outdated regulations that are in conflict with the Supreme Court's recent decisions. I've been encouraged by President Trump's decisive actions to get the big hand of government off the backs and out of the pockets of hardworking folks all across this country. Republicans' pro-growth policies will help lead to an economic boom in this country, and especially, certainly, for our small business owners, and it's something that is desperately needed. In the upcoming panel, you will hear from a few very knowledgeable and strong advocates for common sense regulatory reform as it relates to economic growth. I'll highlight one example. Just last month, Administrator Zeldin and I worked together to revise the Waters of the United States Rule, otherwise known as WOTUS, and end the regulatory whiplash and egregious federal overreach experienced by our farmers and small business owners. Administrator Zeldin has listened to those farmers and ranchers and small business owners about the absurdity of Biden's administration's ideologically driven rulemaking. I want to thank Administrator Zeldin for bringing fact-based analysis and sanity back into the regulatory environment. This action is a major step toward providing clarity for my Iowans and in all corners of every state. Administrator Zeldin has been a great ally to the deregulation and DOGE initiatives, and I look forward to hearing more from his ideas to reform the EPA, which historically has been one of the federal government's most egregious offenders of overreach within the federal regulatory status. So friends, there has never been a better opportunity to cut the size of the administrative state and decrease the regulatory burden on our small businesses so that our economy and our country can flourish. And folks, we need this opportunity. It's imperative that we seize this moment. I want to once again thank the Job Creators Network. Thank you, Alfredo, for hosting this incredible network. And once again, thank you for putting our small businesses first and allowing me to participate this morning in this incredible event. The leaders in this room and those that are viewing today are among those who make the American dream possible. And I want to reiterate my optimism for the future. And thank you so much again. And of course, God bless you all. Enjoy your time this weekend. Thank you.